They said within the study that not using nutrients for the last 14 days resulted in no difference in yield, potency, terpenes, mineral content. What's up everybody? If you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and I'm back with another video. If this is your first time seeing my face, I would love to have you stick around and subscribe. This is my garden talk channel, to where I mostly do discussion videos, topic videos, also have some grow light test videos on this channel as well, and then I have a separate channel which is my main YouTube channel where I show off my plants. Let's just get right into today's video. This is probably going to be my most disliked video. The reason why is because this topic is highly debatable. We're going to talk about flushing, and by the end of this video you should know some of the truth behind whether or not flushing is actually beneficial. Now when I'm talking about flushing, I'm not talking about flushing mid-grow. Sometimes you'll have to flush mid-grow depending on if you're using synthetic nutrients. For example, maybe you have overfed your plants and you need to flush out some of those nutrients. Maybe you have a salt buildup and you need to flush. Maybe your pH is off. Some people flush because of that. I'm not talking about flushing mid-grow. I'm specifically talking about the flush that happens at the end of the grow cycle. So when your plants are almost ready for harvest, some growers will do what's called a 14-day flush. Now not everybody sticks to that 14-day flush. Some people do 10 days, 7 days, 5 days, and then you got some people who don't actually flush their plants at all. So there are various opinions and people have their own reasons for why they like to do a flush at the end of the grow. Some of the things I've heard about is flushing to reduce the amount of nutrients that are in the soil and also in the plant, so that the overall final product has a good taste, smell, and the ash when smoking is more white instead of a gray or black. Some people say that flushing reduces the harshness in the final product. I've also heard that flushing increases terpene content, THC content. There's many reasons why people flush their plants. And up until now, there hasn't really been any scientific studies on this process. So in this video, I'm going to talk about a recent scientific study that was done on the flushing process at the end of the grow. And they got a ton of data and shows whether or not flushing is beneficial or not. So let's talk about the study. So first off, this study actually came out several months ago. It's not brand new information. Some of you watching this probably already came across this study, but I know a lot of my audience is new growers, so I'm pretty sure a lot of this information is going to be new to a lot of my audience. So this particular study was done by RX Green Technologies, and I got some notes over here. So you see my eyes shift over here. I'm just referring to the notes that I have according to the study. I want to make sure that what I'm saying here accurately reflects what is in the study. Now I'm also going to have a link down in the description section below to a web page which goes over the study entirely. So what exactly did they do in this study? So they used the strain Cherry Diesel for this study. They used their own nutrients, and the plants were grown in coco coir. And they did 4 different flush periods. They did a 14-day flush, they did a 10-day flush, a 7-day flush, and 0-day flush. And each flushing period had 12 plants. So they had 12 plants that did a 14-day flush, 12 plants that did a 10-day flush, 12 plants that did a 7-day flush, and then 12 plants that day didn't flush at all. Flower and fan leaf samples were collected from each flushing treatment on the first day of flush and the day before harvest to quantify concentrations of essential plant nutrients. After harvest, the plants were cured before determining final trimmed flower weight, terpenes, and THC concentration. They even took the trim from those plants and evaluated that. They evaluated the trim for THC, yield, and the appearance of the extract. To determine smoking flavor and characteristics, samples of each flushing period were distributed to industry experts in a blind taste test. I want to know where I sign up for this blind taste test because that sounds like a cool job. Each participant received 1 sample of each flushing time without knowledge of its treatment. Participants were asked about their personal flavor preferences before tasting. After tasting, participants were asked to rate the sample of the flower, harshness of smoke, and the color of the ash. Data collected during the course of the trial were analyzed statistically to determine whether flushing times affected smoking quality, flower weight, or the chemical characteristics. So those are the materials and methods used for this study. Now let's talk about what their results were. So they mentioned in the study, visual differences in fan leaves between flushing times were apparent the day before harvest. Plants flushed for 10 or 14 days had leaves that were more yellow, necrotic, and dry than plants flushed for 0 or 7 days. The color of the 14 and 10-day flushed leaves indicated greater breakdown of chlorophyll in the plant, leading to reduced greenness. That right there is key. That's something that I want to discuss at the end of this. This is something that, well, yeah, I'll just save it to the end. As for yield, THC, and terpenes, overall there were no significant differences between treatments for flower weight, THC, or terpene content. Here are the charts showing the average weight per plant, average THC percent, and the dominant terpenes. They also took flower samples taken the day before harvest and analyzed it for the content of essential plant nutrients. That's one of the things I mentioned during the introduction, is a lot of people say that flushing your plant, you flush out those nutrients from the medium and the plant, and that's one of the things that contributes to a greater smoke. They state, overall there was no significant change in the mineral content of flower as a result of different flushing treatments. Here are the charts which show the nutrients flower concentration percent for 14-day flush, 10-day flush, 7-day flush, and plants that weren't flushed at all. Extraction results. Trim from the cherry diesel was sent to an extractor to determine extraction yield and preferred characteristics of the wax. Plants flushed for 14 or 10 days had the highest extraction yield compared to the 7 or 0-day flushes. However, the appearance of the wax for the 0-day flush was preferred over the other flush periods. The 0-day flush was the clearest. So what they conclude on this part is, although increased flush times resulted in higher extraction yields, the finished product was not as desirable for extraction. Now remember, this is a commercial facility. I'm a home grower. When it comes to wax, the clarity of the product, for me personally, I'm not going to be upset if one thing of wax is a little bit darker than the other, but on a commercial side of things, it is something that apparently they look very closely at. Let's talk about the taste and smoke characteristics of the flower. So the cured flower was evaluated by a group of industry experts. It'd be interesting to know who these industry experts actually are. They don't mention it in the study, unfortunately. So they evaluated for flavor and smoking characteristics in a blind taste test. Overall, the duration of the flushing period had no impact on flavor, smoothness of smoke, or color of ash. The 7-day flush period had the highest bad rating, and the 0-day flush had the highest great rating. Most panelists rated the flavor of the samples as okay or good. The 10-day flush had the highest okay ratings, and the 0-day flush had the highest good ratings. Most panelists rated the samples as either earthy or sweet. So it doesn't actually say how many panelists there were. Was there 2 people? Was there 4 people? Was there 10 people? Definitely think that was some important information that should have been said here. Taste test panelists rated the ash color and smoke quality of each sample. Ash color was predominantly black or gray. Smoothness of smoke increased with decreased flushing time, although it wasn't significantly different. I'm going to read their overall conclusion, word by word. I don't want to miss anything on here. In a first-of-its-kind study, RX Screen Technologies evaluated the effects of a flushing period on yield, potency, terpenes, mineral content, and taste characteristics of MJ flower. Overall, the length of the flushing period did not impact yield, potency, terpenes, or taste characteristics of MJ flower. Taste test results indicated a trend towards improved flavor and smoke quality with the 0-day flush. While there were no significant differences in nutrient content, there was a trend towards increased iron and zinc in flower flushed for 14 days. The results of this trial indicate that there is no benefit to flushing MJ flower for improved taste or consumer experience. Okay, so that is what they put in their study. So what are my thoughts? So at the very end of the study, the last sentence that they put here is, the results of this trial indicate that there is no benefit for improved taste or consumer experience. Okay, improved taste, consumer experience, got it. But if we're talking about flushing as a whole, they did list off some benefits in their study, right? They said within the study that not using nutrients for the last 14 days resulted in no difference in yield, potency, terpenes, mineral content, and taste characteristics. Then why use nutrients for the past 14 days? If you're not feeding the plant for the last 14 days, well then you're saving money on nutrients, right? And you save time by not mixing nutrients. And I know in a commercial facility, they have different processes. It's probably well streamlined. Here, for me, as a home grower, mixing nutrients definitely takes a little bit of time, right? There are some synthetic nutrient lineups that have 3 bottles that you mix in, and some have up to 10 bottles that you mix in. So mixing all those bottles within water and then giving to the plant is definitely time consuming. And doing that versus just watering, well, you're definitely saving time with just watering. And like they said, not feeding nutrients had no impact on yield. That's one of the arguments that I hear pretty often is if you're not feeding the plant all the way up to the end, then those last couple weeks you're potentially losing yield. And the study proved otherwise. So that's one thing. Now let's talk about the harshness. I'd like to know, what is the humidity or the moisture content within the buds? As home growers, one thing that we hear pretty often is that if your hygrometer is around 62% within the jars, then the buds are at the ideal level for consumption. Now on the commercial side of things, they don't measure that way. From my understanding, they use a moisture meter and they actually stick it within the bud to find out what the moisture content is within the bud. I don't know too much about the process, so if anybody works in a commercial facility and can explain more, please let us know down in the comments. But yeah, I mean, the drier the sample, the more harsh it is going to be on the throat. If it was around 62% RH, in the jar with the buds, that's going to be a lot less harsh than something that's more dry, 40%, 30% RH. That's definitely a contributing factor to harshness on the throat when smoked. So I'd like to know what the samples, what the moisture content was, or what the humidity was in the jars that they were sampling. Another thing is, how long did they cure the buds for before they consume them? On the home grow side of things, we dry our plants, then it goes into the curing process. Now oftentimes I hear that you want to do at least 2 weeks in the curing process before you smoke the buds. Even at that point, I feel like I can still taste some of the chlorophyll. I personally wait until 30 days into curing before I consume, and even at that point I can still taste some of the chlorophyll. According to Leafly, it takes 6 months to a year in order for those buds to have the true taste and smell. So how long they cure for is definitely a contributing factor to harshness, in my opinion. And one of the things that they highlighted in the study, which I said I was going to refer back to at the end, was the color of the 14 and 10-day flushed leaves indicate a greater breakdown of chlorophyll in the plant, leading to reduced greenness. So I'd like to know, was it a faster cure for the plants that were flushed 14 days, 10 days versus the plants that had a 0-day flush, for example? That's really the main reason why I flush my plants. If the chlorophyll breakdown process is happening while the plant is still alive and you harvest the plant where it's mostly yellow leaves, that should be a faster cure than if you would harvest the plant with all green leaves. So that's one thing. I really think that if they included the chlorophyll breakdown, they had that sort of measurement within the study, that kind of would have been the icing on the cake. But they didn't measure the chlorophyll amount during curing, so I'll have to save that for another study. I just want to say that I think it's awesome that they did this study and that they're sharing the results with the public. I personally don't think that we can truly conclude that flushing has zero benefit, but I do think that this study is absolutely a step in the right direction. So thank you to RX Green Technologies for doing this study and sharing with all of us. I'd love to know in the comment section below, what are some of the reasons that you heard to flush at the end of the grow? What do you think about this study? If you currently flush at the end of the grow, after hearing this information, are you going to continue to flush, or are you not going to flush anymore? I personally love to read studies about this, so if any of you have any links to any studies that have been done, it doesn't have to be about flushing, it could be about any grow process, please link them down in the description section below, and maybe I'll make a video on it in the future. That's pretty much it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please click that thumbs up, and we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.